In 1590, a supply ship arrived on the coast of what is now North Carolina. The captain was John White. He had been gone for 3 years. He was returning to check on the colony he had helped establish. 115 men, women, and children who had sailed from England to build the first permanent English settlement in the New World. He expected to find a village, homes, fires, familiar faces. What he found was silence. The settlement was completely empty, not burned, not destroyed, not ransacked by violence, just gone. Every structure intact, every possession left behind. 115 people had vanished without a trace, without a body, without a note, without any sign of struggle, except one, carved into a wooden post at the entrance to the settlement. One word, Croatoan. That word is still unexplained today. It is the oldest unsolved disappearance in American history. And the more you learn about it, the stranger it gets. Because the mystery isn't just that the colonists vanished, it's that almost everything about the story that most people know is wrong. Let's start from the beginning. In 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh received a charter from Queen Elizabeth I to establish an English colony in the Americas. England was watching Spain grow rich from its colonies in Central and South America, and Elizabeth wanted a piece of it. Raleigh never went himself. He sent scouts first, 2 ships that returned with favorable reports about the coast of present-day North Carolina, and 2 Native Americans named Manteo and Wanchese, who sailed back to England and spent a year there before returning as translators. The first attempt at settlement came in 1585. A military expedition of about 100 men landed on Roanoke Island, a barrier island off the coast of what the English called Virginia. It went badly almost immediately. The colonists were soldiers, not farmers. They didn't know how to feed themselves. They alienated the local Croatoan and Secatan peoples with violence and mistrust, burning a village over a stolen silver cup. By 1586, when Francis Drake stopped by on his way home from raiding Spanish settlements, the colonists begged him to take them back to England. He did. The second attempt was different in design. Raleigh learned from the failure. Instead of soldiers, he recruited families. Ordinary people with a genuine stake in making it work. 115 colonists, men, women, and children, arrived on Roanoke Island in July 1587 under the leadership of John White, an artist and mapmaker who had been on the first expedition and knew the territory. 9 days after arrival, something remarkable happened. A baby was born. Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas. John White was her grandfather, but almost immediately, the colony was in trouble. Their supplies were running low. Relations with the local peoples were tense, still poisoned by the violence of the first expedition. The colonists needed more supplies from England, and they needed them before winter. John White, the governor, Virginia Dare's grandfather, was the obvious person to sail back to England to get them. He didn't want to go. His family was here. His granddaughter had just been born. The colonists persuaded him. He left in late 1587 with a promise to return as quickly as possible. He never returned quickly. What happened next was not White's fault, and this is one of the parts most people don't know. When White arrived back in England, he found a country in crisis. The Spanish Armada was threatening invasion. Queen Elizabeth had issued an order that no ships could leave England. Every vessel was needed for national defense. White tried desperately to get back. He managed to obtain 2 small ships in 1588, but they were attacked by Spanish privateers and forced to turn back. He tried again and again. He finally made it back in 1590, 3 years after leaving. Not because he didn't try, because a world war had gotten in the way, and he found the empty settlement. The word Croatoan referred to a nearby island, present-day Hatteras Island, and to the native people who lived there, the Croatoan, with whom the colonists had maintained a relatively positive relationship. This was not random graffiti. White had agreed with the colonists before he left that if they moved, they would carve their destination into a tree or post. If they were in distress, they were to carve a cross above the name. There was no cross. White wanted to sail to Croatoan Island immediately, But a storm was building. His ship's anchor cables snapped. The crew refused to risk the crossing. They sailed back to England. White never returned to the Americas. He died around 1593, never knowing what had happened to his daughter, his granddaughter, or the 112 other people he had left behind. And here is where the mystery deepens. The simple explanation that the colonists moved to Croatoan Island and integrated with the native Croatoan people is actually the most plausible one. But no one ever went to look. Not seriously, not systematically, not until centuries later when it was far too late to find anything conclusive. Why? Because Raleigh's colony was a commercial venture. When it failed to produce returns, investors lost interest. England's attention shifted. The colonists, 115 ordinary people, were simply abandoned by the enterprise that had brought them there. Nobody came back because nobody with power had a financial reason to come back. The mystery persisted, not because the answer was hidden, but because nobody looked. For 4 centuries, the story of Roanoke was treated as a ghost story, a romantic mystery. The lost colony, it became part of American mythology. The vanished settlers, the carved word, the unanswerable question. It was taught in schools as an enduring enigma. What it actually was a failure of institutional responsibility. 115 people were deposited on a barrier island in an unfamiliar continent with insufficient supplies, deteriorating relations with their neighbors, and a political structure back home that stopped functioning before it could support them. They weren't lost, they were abandoned, and then they were forgotten. And then the forgetting was dressed up as mystery. The archaeological evidence that has slowly accumulated over the last century points overwhelmingly towards survival and integration. In 1937, a series of stones were found in North Carolina claiming to tell the story of the colony's fate, written by Eleanor White Dare, John White's daughter. Most historians consider the stones fraudulent, though the debate continues. More credibly, multiple surveys of Native American tribes in the region, the Lumbee people in particular, have documented oral traditions, European physical traits, and English surnames that date back to the colonial period. The Lumbee have long maintained that they are partly descended from the Roanoke colonists. DNA studies are ongoing. Results are inconclusive but not dismissive. In 2020, a team of archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar on Hatteras Island, Croatoan Island, found evidence of a 16th-century European-style structure buried beneath the surface, not conclusive. But there. The colonists almost certainly didn't vanish. They almost certainly moved, adapted, merged with the people already living there, and survived. For a time, in some form, leaving traces that are still being uncovered. But the story we inherited isn't about survival, it's about mystery. Because mystery is more interesting than the truth, which is this. A group of ordinary people were sent somewhere dangerous by people who had power over them. Those powerful people failed to support them, and when the enterprise collapsed, history remembered the enigma and forgot the abandonment. Croatoan was not a riddle, it was a direction. It told John White exactly where to look. He couldn't get there, and nobody who came after him tried hard enough for long enough to find out what was there. The lost colony of Roanoke isn't a mystery about where 115 people went. It's a story about what happens to ordinary people when the systems built to support them stop working, when the supply ships don't come, when the political crisis back home takes priority, when the investors stop seeing a return, when the person who promised to come back, who desperately wanted to come back, simply couldn't get through. The colonists didn't disappear into thin air. They disappeared into the gap between what was promised and what was delivered. And the word they left behind wasn't a mystery. It was an answer that nobody was there to receive.